Now, another one of these teachings of Jesus that doesn't forbid something but gives a different way to do it is in regards to being the greatest. Now, we, depending on the sort of circle of Christianity, if you will, or even just the culture, like some cultures are kind of opposed to people kind of rising up above the rest and being obviously a great person, if you will. It's what they call tall poppy syndrome, maybe in Australia. And it's sort of this idea that if you stand out above the crowd, that's not cool. Well, a flower that stands up above the rest will get snipped or whatever. And so that is this idea of sort of at least a token humility of not standing out above the rest is an idea that some cultures and some church cultures have embraced, I would say. And I don't know of any culture where people love, how shall we say? No, there can be charismatic leaders where people do love them, even though they're quite bombastic, I should say. But on the whole, when it's our peers we're talking about, we generally don't. I guess I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I feel like most of us don't like people who are very obviously egotistical. Well, Jesus didn't say that you shouldn't be great, and he didn't say that you shouldn't aspire to greatness. But his way of going about it was so wildly different than how we tend to think about aspiring to greatness. So I would say that for most of us, we think about greatness in terms, at least I would tend to think about it in terms of achievement, right? Achievement, status, kind of the outward markers of like position, wealth, power, like those are, or influence, is kind of a more sanitized version, if you will. And those are the things we tend to think about as being defining who's a great person, right? Or maybe it's under the achievement categories, you could have a great thinker, a great writer. So there could be excellence in a certain field, could be greatness in the way we often think about it. But the way that Jesus said it, or thought about it, I guess, was pretty radically different. And so for him, he said, if you want to be great, or if you want to be the greatest of all, then you need to be the servant of all. And I haven't looked it up in the original Greek or whatever. I don't know all the nuances of the wording that Jesus used there. Was the connotation more about the humility, the humble aspect of it? Was it more about how helpful you were to people or are to people? I'm not quite sure, being the servant or serving. I don't know for sure what the connotations and elements were there that were most prominent in that scripture. I think about this in the business context. Like, I think a lot of us, or it's easy to pursue business as a way of for identity reasons, right? To become great, or to achieve something, to feel a sense of validation. And if you take this teaching that Jesus said and you apply it to business, it could potentially really put a different spin on how you think about your business. And so, whereas perhaps we're geared towards thinking about, well, how could we maximize profits in a business? If we took this lens and applied it to business, we could say, well, how can we serve people the best through our business? And one thought that I found kind of challenging, and I don't know that I've totally resolved in my mind, but it's this question of, would I be okay with a life filled with service, so just very, very full of just serving, but it would be totally obscure. So it would be non-glamorous. The serving itself would not be maybe especially fun or especially fulfilling on its own merits, if you will. Or at least, maybe it could be fulfilling, but maybe it just wouldn't be fun, right? What about service that wouldn't be fun and which got you no recognition? So no one would look at you and be like, wow, that's such a serving person. And no one will look at you and be like, mostly no one would even look at you. Like they just wouldn't even, they wouldn't think about you. They wouldn't notice you. You would go your entire life having lived an amazing life of service, you know, like up there with the greatest people, you know, serving of all time or whatever. And maybe you died without much money, and people assumed you just weren't great at managing money, and nobody really noticed. I mean, yet you spent your whole life serving. Would I be okay with that? Would I be okay with total, like, zero recognition, not a stitch, no one knew or cared, and yet I spent my life in some type of humble service the entire life? You know, when I recently thought about that, it's kind of like, I don't know, that, yeah. I mean, it's one thing to serve if you'll get a pat on the back, you'll get a little status, like, oh yeah, this guy, he's really helpful, he's a really great guy, he's really good. Or, you know, at the end of, retirement, there's a ceremony, and it's like, wow, look at this dude. And yeah, he never made any money, he doesn't have any status really as far as in general, but, I mean, the bro was a real faithful servant, so what can you say? This dude is a good dude. Not even that, like just nothing. No appreciation. Nobody thanked you. Nobody said, wow, what a life of service you're living. You just served. And the only reward, like, you got no reward here, basically, right? The only reward you got, and potentially, I mean, obviously the most amazing reward you would get would be in heaven. And potentially you get a really great reward there, actually. But pursuing greatness, am I willing to pursue greatness in that? Defined like that? Like, I'm the servant of all, and I'm not known or appreciated or venerated for it. I'm just a servant. Like, if you think about a servant back in Bible times, I would assume that masters, notice, whether their servants were good servants or bad servants, but, like, it wasn't like, let's say you had guests over and your servant came out and took care of your guests. It wasn't like the guests probably were like, wow, that's an amazing servant. Like, wow, they're just serving me. It's all like, no, that's just what's expected. It's like, when the person at the cash register checks you out, you're not like, wow, this person is really serving me, right? Unless they have an amazing attitude or something, right? But in general, it's like, yeah, you're just doing your job, and I expect you to do your job, and I'm not giving you any extra special credit for it. You're just doing your thing. I'm doing my thing. And so, yeah, is that a life of greatness that you want? To be the servant of all? And what would that mean to you?